Nope. The Panasonic AU-EVA1 is not a Canon C200 killer. And so if Panasonic is thinking this is going to be a C200 killer, what they're not taking into account is that most people aren't consuming content in 4K. So 5.7K down to 4K is great. 4K down to 1080 is even better, and that's how most people are consuming content. But Homeland is being shot on C300 Mark IIs. Those shoot 4K, they're going to be downsampled to 1080, and then that's going to be put on a television screen. You don't need 5.7K, but I still can't get over the fact that I don't think that there is a market for people to consume content in 4K. Like, I'm shooting this in 4K, and I'm gonna bet that 90% of you aren't watching this in 4K. 5.7K is cool, raw output is cool. There isn't a device that can capture an output of 5.7K raw. So this is going to be released with a potential firmware update or something so that you can receive a 5.7K raw output, not that it will record internally. It will record internally 4K 60 at 400 megabits per second, 10-bit 422, but so will the C200, and that's going to have 15 stops of dynamic range in C-Log 2, which is great. Like, that's a lot. It's going to be, the C200 Mark II is going to support HDR. The EVA1 is going to support wide dynamic range. That means more in terms of the screen that you're consuming it on as opposed to, how much latitude it has. And so by having that HDR compatibility, that C200 is a little bit more future-proofed. The EVA1 also doesn't have an EVF, which for this form factor and the style of shooting that this camera size and body and price point is suggesting, the way they'll use it, they need an EVF. And I get, in one of the videos that they've put out so far already, it's like, we're just going to rely on third-party manufacturers to make that stuff, or you can just attach a loop to the LCD and it'll be fine. But the big thing is they're not putting one on there. Like, you get one from Canon. Really big point is that C200 has DPAF, and DPAF is one of the more solid and reliable autofocus systems for video, for continuous autofocus in video. Panasonic does not make reliable, consistent television, broadcast, or cinema-grade autofocus. Homeland, Season 6 of Homeland is being filmed on C300 Mark IIs. C300 Mark IIs have DPAF. I don't know if Homeland, when they're shooting Homeland, they're using DPAF. This is they're trusting a camera system that has exceptional performance at a really high professional grade across the board. I don't think there's going to be a market for this same camera to be made by Panasonic. There will always be a market for it, but 5.7K scales down to 4K. Great. How many people are consuming 4K? Not that many. How many people have 4K TVs? A lot more than a year ago. Absolutely. However, most streaming devices that most people own don't support 4K. Most network speeds that most people have don't support 4K. You can output 4K via cable, and that's what they might do for something like the Olympics. If they can get it even in 6 or 8K, they might push it out at 6 or 8K over cable, but you're not going to get a satellite transmission at 6 or 8K. There's still a lot of people on satellite. It really makes me wonder who's the intended audience for this 5.7K camera that will eventually be able to shoot RAW but not internally, when the C200 can shoot Cine RAW Light internally in 4K with 15 stops of dynamic range. I feel like these should be on the same level, but things like the EVF on the Canon will make it a lot more ergonomic. The placement even of the XLR inputs on the C200, much more ergonomic. The DPAF, highly reliable, highly useful. I'm just at a loss as to what Panasonic could come up with in terms of an autofocus system when they're notorious for not putting phase detect in their cameras that could compete. This seems to me a lot more like a camera that's intended for people that are already in Panasonic's GH system, like with the GH5, to be able to take that 4K that outputs at 400 megabits per second, or will with a firmware update, and use a 4K 10-bit with 4K 10-bit 2.2 with V-Log and V-Gamma outputs to be able to match those up. So it's people that are moving from a Micro Four Thirds system to an EF Super 35 system to they're basically creating like a cine line that Canon has within their own ecosystem, but it's a different mount, it's a different sensor size. It doesn't make any sense. So Panasonic, I want to believe in you, but I don't think that this is really the right step to be taking, right? Like, your GH5, a lot of people love. It's a really cool device for a lot of reasons, but I can't imagine that the EVA1 is really going to be the logical next step up for a GH5 user. They have a lot of the hardware stuff nailed down, but they don't have much of the software stuff nailed down, and they're really trying to get this out to cover over Canon C200. But I think the C200 is a really solid, really stable product that will be a great camera for the type of filmmaker that will use that tier of product much better. I think it will serve that filmmaker much better than the EVA1 will. But that's just my opinion. So thank you very much for your time and for your attention. I hope I brought a slightly different perspective than what you might have seen in, other videos, comments, or on Philip Bloom's, or in the comments on Philip Bloom's Instagram post, for example. So yeah, I really appreciate your time and your attention. I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next one.